afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the press conference for Take This Waltz. I'm Maria Rowley, the press conference manager. Before we begin, let me just review a few housekeeping items. Once we get everyone from the film standing on the podium, there'll be about a minute of flash photography, and we ask that photographers then move right to the back. There's no flash during the press conference, so please keep the center aisle and the right aisle clear for our volunteers with microphones to move around with questions. Members of the media, please stand and identify yourselves and name your media outlet before you ask a question. And everyone, please make sure your cell phones are off. This press conference is being streamed live at www.tiff.net/festival. And it is now my pleasure to welcome the director and the cast of Take This Waltz, as well as our moderator, Eric Kohanek. Thanks.
Okay, guys, thanks very much. Well, good afternoon. My name's Eric Kohanek. I'm the moderator for today's press conference on Take This Waltz, which had its TIFF Gala presentation premiere last night at Roy Thompson Hall. With us today we have the movie's writer and director, Sarah Polley. Next to Sarah, actor Seth Rogen, who plays the part of Lou. Next to Seth, we have Sarah Silverman, who plays the part of Lou's sister, Geraldine. And last but not least, we have Luke Kirby, who takes on the role of the other man, a guy named Daniel. Unfortunately, Michelle Williams could not be with us today. She's on set working. If you have any questions, feel free to pop up your hand so we can get a microphone to you. Feel free to identify yourself as well. And we'll take it from there. First of all, let me start off, though, by asking you, Sarah, the seed of the story and the idea, where did that come from? It was an intensely personal journey for the main character. Talk a bit about how you developed the story and the screenplay.
I actually started writing the screenplay, or the outline at least, when I was editing Away From Her. And I had this idea that I wanted to look at marriage at a really different time in life. So I looked at it at the end of a marriage, and I wanted to look kind of somewhere, not quite at the beginning, but after the honeymoon period was over. And I wanted to sort of embrace the idea of a relationship with a lot of playfulness, and that also to explore that feeling of initial desire and that initial love that sometimes peters out.
And how long a process was this to develop the outline and the story? How long?
Well, I probably wrote the outline in a few scenes about 4 or 5 years ago when I was editing Away From Her, and then I picked it up again 2 or 3 years ago and wrote it within a few months.
Okay, great. And talk a bit about the cast that you've assembled. I mean, it's very strong all around. I saw the film this morning. Someone behind me described it as scary good. And you have some characters. Talk a bit about the casting process and getting all the actors into it.
Well, in the past, I think I've always, like with my short films or with Away From Her, I knew every part as I was writing. The only person that I actually knew while I was writing this script was that I constantly thought of Seth playing Lou, and hoped that would happen. Weird. And then I think shortly after the first draft, the idea of Sarah playing Geraldine didn't get out of my head, and I couldn't have imagined anybody else in that part. And then Daniel and Margot were real mysteries to me, and I had to do a lot of thinking about them, and I really needed to find actors to help explain these characters to me, because they were much more ephemeral, and I needed an actor to really fill it in. So I met with Luke, who I've known for years and have acted with, and I've always been a huge fan of his work. And I think as soon as we started talking about it and working together, it was clear to me that he could bring a kind of soulfulness to that character that nobody else could. I mean, the part is written quite as an archetype, and it really needed someone to give it a humanity, which I think he did. And then Michelle, it was the same process of just as soon as I sat down with her and talked to her, knowing she was going to fill in all of the blank spots for me in that character.
I'm picking it up from there. Seth, it's a remarkably understated, toned-down version of Seth Rogen that we see here. Talk a bit about your approach to the character and...
Yeah, I just didn't want to ruin the movie, was kind of my approach, generally speaking. That's usually my approach. Yeah, I mean, I think that I really got what Lou's problem was, honestly. I feel like a lot of people might see the movie and feel an instinct to kind of victimize the character, but I really think that I got the kind of sexual awkwardness, I guess, and the kind of comfort and not, willingness to evolve along with, there's a bug, with his partner. I mean, those instincts were things that I had probably experienced. And on top of that, I really, Michelle really set the tone in a lot of ways for the acting and the whole style of it for me. I just kind of stood back and watched what she was doing and then tried to, again, not ruin that. And yeah, that was kind of my strategy on a day-to-day basis.
Sarah, I wonder if you can weigh in on the toned-down Sarah Silverman that we see in this.
I don't get, what do you mean by toned
Well, we see-
down? Like, I mean, I when you said that about Seth, I was like, what was toned down about it? I mean, it's not like, first of all, it's not like when he's doing comedy, he's like, weird noises.
I went with it.
I mean, he's this guy with this voice, and he said different lines.
I do say the word cocksucker decidedly less in this movie, probably, in general. That's toned down, I suppose.
But it was just the lines were beautiful, and he said them honestly. I feel like in comedy, you can be saying a bunch of lies, but if the audience smells bullshit if there isn't some sort of honesty coming through. So I feel like it's a natural thing to do in this. I'm not saying that it wasn't challenging for me at times,
but it probably didn't. I mean, a lot of people, have been talking to me about it, honestly, like it's totally different than what I've done before on a movie, but it doesn't feel any different than anything, right? And for you too, I would imagine.
And you were incredible in this movie, and like it's just, I know this sounds really dick sucky or whatever. That's not what I meant. Like, what is it? What is that when you're like complimenting someone? Shit. Oh Jesus Christ. But it was beautiful. I don't mean to downplay this and stuff, but it is like weird because we've had now, like 30 hours of like the same questions, and it's almost like interrogation in that you start really like rethinking all your answers, and then everything becomes like curious and odd, and you just start thinking like, well, all right, whatever you want to hear. And, so it is kind of technically like it, and I'm not putting it down. It's been a blast. It really has, though. I mean, and I'm not complaining, but it's just interesting, just psychologically, how this whole process is, because I've just been playing along with like, whoa, this is a big change for you, but it's like just saying
really.
words honestly. It doesn't really feel so different.
Yeah.
I'm not playing that down, but just to be totally honest.
Yeah, it's true. So my answer before was bullshit. It honestly was no different at all. I was doing the same shit I always do. No, it is true. thought I would sound smart at TIFF.
We have a question over. Question in the audience.
Mila Kanev, Mix TV. Congratulations, Sarah, and the cast. It's scary good, you're right. And I know, Sarah, it was definitely not a traditional choice for this kind of characters in the movie, and you did it. It's really great. But what I wanted to know, there's such a chemistry between everybody. I wanted to, if you could share with us the most fun moments and the most challenging moments you experienced in the movie.
Let's start with Luke.
Lead off, Luke.
I'm still reeling from what Sarah said. Where are we?
Why are we here?
Well, when the question of chemistry to me is always a bit of a stumper, because people talk about great chemistry, and I always think part of what we do is try to make chemistry with anything. I mean, if you're not making chemistry, it's kind of, there's no point. I mean, you know, if you're doing a scene with a water bottle, you should make chemistry with it, you know.
He can.
Squeezed it and like one drop went down. It was like, wow.
So, but truly, I think what, you know, you know, obviously working with Michelle was incredible, and her ability to be present and vulnerable, or at least fool me into thinking she was that, made it easy for me to fall into that, and was pretty exciting and a little crazy making. So that's my take on chemistry.
What about a fun moment?
Funny moments?
Yeah.
No.
No? There were none?
I guess when he was fucking her on the chair, that was
All right, then. Over here. Oh,
I don't know. The whole thing was the whole thing was really fun and enjoyable. Honestly, I mean, I think for a movie that maybe has, you know, some intense emotional moments, it was honestly one of the most relaxed, kind of easygoing, fun sets I've ever been on. On a day-to-day basis, it was really nice and pleasant. And if you just came to hang out, you know, you wouldn't have assumed we were making a movie that was about something that at times was so, you know, heavy. But it felt more like the funny scenes than the than the serious ones, I guess. That's what I remember.
That's Sarah?
You go first.
I'll go first. It's funny, like, older ladies can be pushy and everyone is okay with that. She's like, no, still me.
She's earned it.
Funny, well, you know, it was, the reason why it was so fun was because Sarah, you know, like when a director is like, she has a vision and she knows how to get what she wants and she is very specific and, you know, like is very, but she does that without ever stopping being lovely and warm and effusive. I mean, the first day I shot, I did my very first take and she came over to me and she said, "That was amazing." And I was like, "Oh my God, thank you." And then this girl brought her coffee and she goes, "This coffee is amazing." And I was like, "Oh, okay." I mean, I can know how to adjust
Was
to
it
this.
coffee amazing?
It was so nice. Was it coffee amazing? And then, you know, uncomfortable parts, obviously, like for me, last night, I mean, I completely was watching it and having fun, and then when we were in the swimming pool, I was like, "Oh my God, it's coming up!" And I started like having like a panic attack. And then when the naked scene came on, I had an actual heart attack. But you know what? I'm proud to have done it, and I'm glad. And you know, I made some. And you know, Sarah really wanted it to be like real bodies and real women of all sizes and shapes and ages, and I really wanted to be a part of that. So I actually gained about 28 pounds for the role. Shut up. Fuck you. I wanted to be like lumpier, and then I thought I said, wouldn't it be interesting to have this kind of I wanted to kind of look like have a posture of like a lady caveman. So I'm really happy with how it came out. I think it did.
Sarah, you were going to answer that?
Okay. I guess when I sort of look at the actors here, I realized that each one of them I was always a huge fan of, but I'd never seen them play a role quite like this. So it was also a selfish thing as a fan to want to see Seth and Sarah play dramatic roles, because I agree, it doesn't seem like a different process to me, and there's an authenticity and a kind of honesty and a bravery in their work that it just translates so obviously, I think, and naturally to dramatic roles. So it was so thrilling to see that, and for it to totally exceed my expectations even of the performances I thought would happen. And then with Luke, I'd also never actually seen him play a role like this, and it was just really fun to see actors you admire do something different and get to watch it actually firsthand. It was amazing. And in terms of challenges, I have to say, the first few weeks of the shoot were so idyllic, and generally I think the shoot was idyllic and joyful, but there was a period of time where, I think especially for Michelle, she really fell in love with Toronto and loved it here, and was even considering moving here. And it was she was able to have conversations in cafes and have her freedom and have, a life outside of, being under scrutiny. And I think it was about a month in where the paparazzi started following her around and taking pictures of her and taking pictures of Sarah. And I think that was a moment where I found that challenging, because I was so proud that I could offer my hometown as a refuge from that kind of thing. So that was difficult, and I felt this sort of wild need and instinct to protect them, which was kind of impossible. And I mean, I'm sure they're used to it by now, but the idea of living under that kind of scrutiny and pictures showing up on the internet and snarky comments, and I found that difficult. So that was really the only really big challenge. So.
Okay, we have a question over here first.
Hi, this is Kinda Mardambe from Press Plus One, and I wanted to know if the relationship between Margot and Luke was very scripted or unscripted, because it seemed very natural. And I wanted to know about the contrast between Margot's two relationships, how you decided to make that contrast happen. Okay.
I think it was some of the scenes were totally word for word how they were written, and some of them, like the scene where I'm on the phone and she's kind of dancing around, that was just, I literally think it was Lou's on the phone and Margot does a funny dance to distract him, and then sometimes, Sarah would just let the camera run and tell us to set up for a party, and then we would do that for 20 minutes as they filmed it. It was very surreal, honestly, at times, because normal takes are 2 or 3 minutes long, and when you're pretending that someone's your wife and you're setting up for a party for 20 minutes, you really kind of start to feel like that for brief moments, which as an actor I hate. I hate actually feeling what I'm supposed to be portraying. It scares me and makes me feel like a weak person. So I try to avoid it at all costs, but there were glimpses of that in this movie, which terrified me. But it was, I think, but some of the scenes, the answer is it was a variation. I think some of the scenes were totally scripted, literally word for word how they were written, and some of them were kind of more found as we shot them. Right?
Yeah. No, and I mean, to be truthful, my favorite moments in the film were all moments that happened after cut should have happened. And we shot on digital precisely for that purpose. We knew we were working with actors who would be amazing at creating moments that we couldn't have scripted, and I think the moments that for me really sing in the film are those moments that they found when they were, the camera had been rolling for a long time.
We have a question over here.
Mina Ree from Global News. Sarah, you not only decided to script this in Toronto but film it here. Talk about your decision to do that.
From the beginning of the genesis of this idea, I never imagined this film shooting anywhere else, and I wouldn't have shot it anywhere else if for some reason it had been financially impossible to shoot it here. I wanted to show Toronto the way I experience it in the summer. I find it like an incredibly vibrant, colorful, amazing place to live. And on screen, it's either, playing an American city, or it's in the dead of winter and it's bleak. And I guess I just feel like my memories and experience of Toronto when I'm away and thinking about it never really look like that. So that was always an important part of the process for me, was to show my hometown the way I saw it.
That feeling of being protective over them, you're going to feel 100 times worse when you have a kid. But congratulations.
Pardon? Sorry?
That feeling of protectiveness for your cast that you spoke about will be augmented by 100% when you have your baby.
We have a question down here in the front.
Hi, I'm Janine Falcon from L'Oreal Paris, and this is your beauty moment. Now, I know, I look for that reaction. That's awesome.
Are you gonna throw makeup at us right now?
No, I'm actually. I would never throw things because I would miss. But basically, and it's Michelle Williams kind of had a huge beauty industry ripple when she chopped off all her hair, and people were talking about it. So this is kind of directed at all of you. Is there any appearance move that you would make that you think would cause a ruckus in the beauty industry, in the news? Seth Rogen's having a good time with that. So, did you get the question?
No.
Not at all.
Not at all.
I got it.
Okay, go for it.
I'd like higher cheekbones.
Wait, something we'd like to do, or something that you say would make a big splash?
Something you would consider, you think, wow, this would actually make people sort of take notice that I've done something different.
Physically to our appearance.
Just your appearance, it doesn't
Stick
mean
a tattoo on my forehead.
not necessarily surgery, but it's cosmetic. Something like chopping your hair off, going an unexpected color. Or you could tell me whether your lipstick or mascara preference.
This seems like a Seth question.
It is. How long do I have? Because I could really go on for around 45 minutes if I can get into it.
Eric will tell you how long.
I'm just joking. I have nothing to say about that. Different shade of lipstick. I don't know. Hammer your teeth out?
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know.
All right, then.
All right.
We had another question down front right next to her.
That's a really good question.
Yeah. But seriously, guys, we should talk about this. Can we huddle and come back to you?
That's oddly the thinker.
It is a thinker.
Go ahead.
Hi, Julie Gordon from Reuters. Sarah, Polly, first of all, for you, how has being an actress helped you to really get good performances out of your cast? And then the second part for Sarah Silverman, has working with Sarah inspired you to consider directing?
I don't know that being an actor actually necessarily teaches you many skills in terms of directing. I was astonished when I made my first short film that, in fact, I knew absolutely nothing about filmmaking. I sort of assumed, having been on sets my whole life, I would have picked up something, but it was a blank slate. Like, nothing occurred to me. I had noticed nothing over the years, apparently. So it was definitely learning from scratch, and I think the only thing I can say is being an actor makes you know how badly a director can throw you off. So it makes you self-conscious in a way that I think is probably pretty healthy. And I think for me, it's important to figure out if the actor wants more or less from me. So they're just people who I talk way too much to, and I figure that out quickly, and people who I'm not talking enough to who want more interaction. So I spend some time trying to figure out what they need, as opposed to imposing my own way of directing actors.
And Sarah?
Yeah, I mean, she was so, I know that's not the question, but she was so nurturing and warm, and there must be, something to that from coming from knowing both sides of it. My question was, directing? I have a lot of opinions, and when it's, my own show, like when I had my own show, I definitely saw how I knew how I wanted it done, and I knew. When I know, and then if I don't know, then I just go with whoever's most passionate. But I think that I would maybe creatively love to direct, but I'm such a quality of life person, and that it's too much work than I'm really is my cup of tea. at this point. I mean, you got to be the first one there and the last one there, gone, and
Not always. Yeah, sometimes it's all directing's what you make it.
Really?
Yeah, sometimes directors don't do shit.
Is that because you're about to direct and you're just telling yourself that?
Exactly. You can take a lackadaisical approach.
I think I would like to someday. I've got a couple ideas for short things, but no, I like to have lunch with friends and stuff. I'm too lazy.
We have another question down front here.
This guy's going to ask another lipstick question, I know.
Nicholas Villius, Edmonton Senior, Edmonton, Alberta. Question for you, Sarah, Polly. Wasn't it a real challenge using two over-the-top personalities like Sarah Silverman and Seth Rogen in such a serious
It's not like we were like
film?
Ace Ventura.
Yeah, exactly.
How did you do it? Or did you question yourself at any point?
How did you bridle that?
It's true.
I'm a huge fan of Seth's, and I've probably seen every episode of the Sarah Silverman program about 3 or 4 times. So again, like I mean, yeah, they're really funny, but I feel like they're also like really great performers and have such a depth and authenticity to them. So it wasn't a stretch for me. Like I wasn't thinking outside of the box even in terms of the casting. Like they were obvious choices to me for these roles. And I mean, I think it is something to talk about when a dramatic actor can go and do comedy. Like I think that's really impressive. I think it's less shocking when a great comedian does a great dramatic role, because again, like as Sarah was saying, you feel a lack of truth in a comedian, and it doesn't really work if that isn't there. So.
It's honestly almost easier. It's like the same shit, but you don't tell jokes.
So yeah, I mean, I had no nerves around it at all. I was really excited about it, and I was more surprised with just the amazing tradition of comedians like Bill Murray doing incredibly dramatic, great roles. I was amazed by how surprised people would be that would have worked. So.
I approached the role the same way I approached my role in Fart Cops, which is the movie I had just done. And no.
Sarah, we got another question here, but just before that, I wonder if you could talk a bit about the music in the film. The songs are almost characters as well in telling the story. I wonder if you could talk a bit about your choices there.
Yeah, I mean, again, one of the original things I knew about this film, I knew it was going to be set in Toronto, and I knew there was going to be a lot of independent Canadian music, and I knew there was going to be a lot of nudity. Those were the 3 things I knew about the film before I made it. And I was writing the film listening to a lot of music, and I wanted the music to kind of reflect and feel like the place in which the film was set. And yeah, it always felt like this film had to have an energy to it and an excitement and a playfulness that music really helped. So.
And what about the use of Take This Waltz as a starting point, or sort of a major point in the film?
I can't completely explain it except tonally. I was listening to that song as I was writing the script, and it put me in a place that helped me imagine the story and imagine the characters. I don't 100% know what that song means to this day, but I sort of I have a sort of sense of it being a metaphor and somehow fitting in with whatever the metaphor of the film is, which I also don't understand.
Okay, great. We have a question back here.
Hi, Kerry Roberts from Filmography on Movie Central. My question is for Seth. In the past, there's been this feeling that once an actor has left Canada, gone to Los Angeles, that Canada's lost them forever. But you're here at the festival with this film. Your good friend Jay Baruchel's here with Goon. Are you seeking out Canadian films? Is that trend sort of breaking, do you feel?
I mean, honestly, we are very interested in making more movies in Canada. Not for the least of which reasons are financial. The fact that I'm Canadian just helps a lot. And we shot 50-50 in Vancouver, which is the first movie I had actually ever made in Canada. And it was a wonderful experience. And honestly, I'm just lazy and like to sleep in my own bed, so that's why I like to make movies in Los Angeles. But if I you know, but as we are making slightly riskier movies, I guess, we don't get as much money and are shooting them in other cities. Vancouver and Toronto are much better than Albuquerque and Pittsburgh, I'll tell you that much. So it was, yeah, you know, yeah, we are looking to come here more in the future to make our films. Is the answer.
Question over here.
Hi, I didn't want to lead with this question last time. It's Kinda Mardambe from Press Plus One. This is for Luke. Tell me a little bit about what I'm calling the thinking women's most erotic love scene in the cafe.
That scene is incredible.
Isn't it just?
I jerk off to that scene.
Well,
And he's in character while he does
Exactly, yeah. I cry while I do it, but I jerk off to it. It's pretty much how it goes anyway.
Cuts out all of Michelle's reaction shots and just jerks off.
Yeah, exactly.
Looking into the camera.
It's just Luke talking to me. What would you do to me next, Luke?
Give him a time to shine. We've been talking this whole.
I don't know what.
Talk about what that was like to film.
No, not at all. No, we didn't rehearse it at all, and we did spend time rehearsing all the other scenes, or most of them. We didn't even read the scene out loud at the table read. We read it, but
I remember.
other than that, that was it.
That was like this.
And so and we shot it on the first day, and it was kind of mine and Michelle's ice breaking of, you know, actually being in a room with a crew and trying to tell the story. And it kind of just landed. It happened sort of seamlessly, and butter was melted, and
The other scene.
it was really just, you know, it just kind of, I knew the words. The words were, Sarah had written the words, and I just said them, and they worked.
To follow up on that, talk about the other scene that was remarkable was the underwater scene, sort of the mating ritual that was going on. How was that to film? Was that a difficult process?
It was just a long time to be in a pool. You know, it was like 14 hours in a pool, so I think that by hour 4, Michelle and I already had dead red eyes, and
The prunage alone.
the prunage alone.
What was weird about that scene was I actually didn't know when I cast you, Michelle, that you were synchronized swimmers who could do that for 14 hours. It was very confusing.
Yeah, it seemed to. I actually became a better swimmer because I'm generally not a strong swimmer, and I took some lessons, truthfully.
You
Yeah,
did?
to try and improve my form. It was delightful. You know, being in a pool is nice.
Sarah, can you talk a bit more about the? I'm sorry.
I didn't know they gave adult swimming lessons. Were you like in a class full of 8-year-olds?
Yeah. Just wanted to join in.
Sarah,
Okay.
can you talk a bit about some of the other iconic settings, Lewisburg, the Lighthouse, Peggy's Cove, and your choices there, and what you were trying to, why you made those choices?
You know, it really is just one of those things I wrote, which I liked writing, and I had once gone to Lewisburg because I met this awesome guy named Stan who's like traveled all over Canada and MG for years and years, and I asked him if I had to go to one place in Canada, where should I go, and he said Lewisburg, so I actually went, and couldn't believe it, actually. I really highly recommend going. So I don't know, I wanted to write it there. I wanted her to meet him somewhere away that involved a change of planes. I also liked the weird little glimpse into that kind of bizarre period of Canadian history, however brief. And then it had to be somewhere they need to change planes, so I thought it would be kind of a great and very awkward place to to meet somebody in the middle of one of those sort of things that the animators were doing.
We have time for one or two more questions, so if you have any, please pop up your hand. And while they're getting mics to them, can you talk a bit more too about some of the other locations in Toronto and how important they were in telling this story and the specific choices of the Scrambler and things like that?
I mean, a lot of the locations of the films are just some of my favorite places in Toronto. I mean, they're just places that I feel are amazingly cinematic and places that feel like Toronto to me. The Scrambler is a ride I just go on a lot, and every time I've been on it, I've always, as you see people sort of almost about to crash towards you, I've been imagining that scene for years. So it ended up being a great place to set, what ends up being a big transition in the relationship between Daniel and Margot, because it could happen in silence, but actually a lot was happening. So.
Okay, we have a question down here.
Hi everyone, Andrea Case, CTV News. Sarah Polly, a question for you. It's been 5 years. A lot has happened in 5 years since you made your last film. We know personally what's happening with you, but professionally, can you look ahead from this film? Are you writing anything else? Are you thinking about your next project?
I'm at the beginning stages of writing something else right now, another script. I have no idea how having a baby will change the timeline of when I'll do that, so I'm waiting to figure that out. I know a lot of women who their ideas of their work life change dramatically after they have kids, and some people who want to continue on as normal, so I'm waiting to find that out.
Okay, if there are no more questions, I know you guys have to be off somewhere. Thank you very much for being here. Thank you all for coming.
Thank you.